The soft, rhythmic whir of the server fans in Rack 3B, Bay 7, was usually a comforting symphony to me, the sound of intricate, logical systems performing their silent, vital dance. My name is Alex Ramsey. Until a week ago, I was a senior systems administrator at Omnicorp, a monolithic entity in the tech finance world. I wasn't a corporate climber, I was a digital plumber, a deep system diagnostician. My thrill came from elegant code, resilient networks, and the quiet satisfaction of anticipating a problem before it cascaded into chaos. I spoke fluent Python, SQL, and network topology, less so the nuanced dialect of boardroom politics. This preference, I would learn, made me vulnerable. Omnicorp wasn't just a company, it was an ecosystem. Its tendrils reached into global markets, processing billions in transactions daily, managing vast databases of client information, and running complex proprietary algorithms that were the envy of its competitors. The heart of this digital leviathan was the Prometheus core, a massively complex, somewhat antiquated, but utterly critical database system. And Prometheus was sick. I knew it. I'd been its reluctant physician for years. The warnings had been there, not as subtle whispers, but as klaxons I'd repeatedly sounded in countless emails, memos, and increasingly frustrated meetings. The Prometheus core is running on legacy hardware with unsupported firmware, read one of my ignored reports from 18 months prior. The current backup protocols are insufficient for a Tier 1 critical system. Recovery time objective in a catastrophic failure scenario would be days, not hours. Data integrity is at significant risk due to degrading storage arrays. I'd proposed a phased migration to a modern, more resilient architecture, complete with detailed cost-benefit analyses and risk assessments. My proposals were consistently shelved by upper management, particularly by Mr. Henderson, VP of IT Operations, a man whose technical understanding seemed to peak at rebooting his own laptop. His mantra was cost containment and, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Prometheus, in his view, wasn't broke, it was just creaky. He preferred to spend his budget on flashier, client-facing tech that looked good in shareholder reports. The system failure, when it finally came, wasn't a gentle decline, it was an apocalyptic crash. It started on a Tuesday morning, with sporadic error messages flickering across monitoring screens. Within an hour, those flickers became a raging inferno. The Prometheus core had suffered a catastrophic cascade failure. Multiple primary storage arrays went offline simultaneously, their ancient controllers finally giving up the ghost. The failover systems, which I'd also warned were underspec'd and inadequately tested, buckled under the strain. Data corruptions spread like a virus. The digital arteries of Omnicorp seized. Trading platforms froze mid-transaction. Customer accounts became inaccessible. Internal communications collapsed. The company website, a beacon of corporate self-assurance, displayed a stark, uninformative, experiencing technical difficulties message that fooled no one. The financial bleeding was immediate and torrential, millions of dollars per minute, some analysts later estimated. The next 72 hours were a descent into a special kind of IT hell. The server room, usually a precisely climate-controlled hum, became a chaotic war room. Teams of us, hollow-eyed and fueled by an unholy trinity of caffeine, sugar, and sheer panic, battled the digital Cerberus. I was at the heart of it, my fingers a blur across multiple keyboards, trying to isolate corrupted sectors, initiate data recovery from the woefully inadequate backups, and reroute critical functions to any auxiliary system that could still breathe. Sleep was a forgotten luxury. Meals were cold, pizza slices eaten standing up. My partner, Sarah, a fiercely intelligent investigative journalist who usually understood the pressures of my job, left increasingly worried voicemails I didn't have time to answer. The air crackled with tension, with the unspoken fear of careers ending, of a corporate giant brought to its knees. Slowly, painstakingly, we managed to stabilize some peripheral systems, to claw back fragments of data. But the Prometheus core itself, the crown jewel, was a smoldering ruin. The data loss was monumental. As the immediate crisis began to subside, replaced by the grim reality of long-term recovery and massive financial repercussions, the corporate blame-throwers emerged from their bunkers. In the initial fog of war, there was a sense of shared struggle. But with the stock price in freefall and regulatory bodies circling, the executive suite needed a narrative. And every good narrative needs a villain. I should have seen the crosshairs centering on me sooner. I was a senior admin with high-level access. I was known for being outspoken, sometimes to the point of tactlessness, about system vulnerabilities. I wasn't part of Henderson's inner circle of yes-men. I was, in short, the perfect scapegoat, knowledgeable enough to be plausibly responsible, but not politically connected enough to effectively defend myself within the corporate structure. The summons to the 54th floor, to the hushed, mahogany-paneled office of CEO Marcus Thornton, felt less like an invitation and more like an execution order. Thornton, a man whose silver hair and Savile Row suits exuded an aura of unshakable authority, was flanked by two impassive lawyers from Omnicorp's notoriously aggressive legal firm, and, to my surprise, a grim-faced Henderson. Thornton began with a performance of feigned regret. "Alex," he said, his voice a carefully modulated baritone, "this is a difficult day for all of us at Omnicorp. The system failure has been unprecedented." He paused, letting the weight of the word hang in the air. "A preliminary internal review has unfortunately identified critical lapses in system oversight and adherence to established security protocols within your direct area of responsibility." Lies. Every word a carefully crafted lie. I opened my mouth to object, to present the reams of documentation, the ignored warnings, but Henderson cut me off, his voice tight with an almost rehearsed indignation. "Alex, we trusted you. The integrity of Prometheus was your domain. We have logs, access records. It's clear there were unauthorized modifications, a bypass of critical alert systems just prior to the crash, originating from a terminal with your credentials." More lies. Brazen, fabricated accusations. My terminal? My credentials? I felt a cold fury rise, battling the shock. "That's impossible," I stated, my voice a low growl. "My credentials are secure. I made no unauthorized modifications. In fact, I have documented evidence of my repeated warnings about the system's instability, warnings that you, Mr. Henderson, personally dismissed." Thornton held up a placating hand, though his eyes were like chips of ice. "Alex, this isn't the time for recriminations. The fact is, the damage is done. The board is demanding accountability." He slid a thick document across the polished expanse of his desk. "This is a voluntary separation agreement. It includes a generous severance package, contingent on your full cooperation, and of course, a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. It's the best way forward for everyone. A clean break." A gag order disguised as generosity. They weren't just firing me, they were trying to buy my silence, to make me the official villain in their corporate tragedy. The sheer, unadulterated gall of it was breathtaking. "I will not sign this," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I am not responsible for this failure. Managerial incompetence and willful negligence are responsible, and I can prove it." One of the lawyers finally spoke, his voice a dry rustle. "Mr. Ramsey, we strongly advise you to reconsider. Contesting this would be unwise. Omnicorp will vigorously defend its position and its reputation. We have considerable resources. Do you?" The threat was unambiguous. I stood up. "I may not have Omnicorp's resources," I said, meeting Thornton's gaze directly, "but I have something you clearly lack: the truth." I walked out of that office, not with the severance package, but with a burning resolve. They had drawn their battle lines. I would draw mine. My access credentials, I knew, would be revoked within minutes. But in the tech world, minutes can be an eternity. Back in my suddenly hostile cubicle, under the nervous, averted gazes of my former colleagues, I didn't pack my sad little box of desk plants and coffee mugs. Instead, my fingers flew across my keyboard with a speed and precision born of years of practice and a newfound, righteous fury. I initiated a series of encrypted, high-speed data transfers from Omnicorp's internal servers to a secure, anonymous cloud storage account I'd set up years ago for personal projects. I didn't just take my own emails and reports. I took everything. System logs going back years, internal audit, reports that Henderson had buried, budget meeting minutes where my requests for upgrades were denied, email chains between executives discussing acceptable risk levels regarding Prometheus, network traffic analyses, security vulnerability assessments. I even managed to snag a snapshot of the very logs Henderson claimed implicated me, knowing they would likely be sanitized later. It was a colossal data heist, a digital equivalent of looting the castle armory before being exiled. It was risky, potentially illegal if I was caught or if I misused it, but it was the only ammunition I had. By the time security arrived, looking uncomfortable and apologetic, to escort the disgruntled ex-employee from the building, my digital war chest was secure. The first few days of unemployment were a strange limbo. The anger still simmered, but now it was mixed with a chilling sense of vulnerability. Omnicorp was a giant. I was one guy. But I wasn't entirely alone. Sarah, my partner, was a rock. When I finally told her everything, laid out the whole sordid mess, from the ignored warnings to the scapegoating and my clandestine data backup, her journalistic instincts went into overdrive. Her initial shock and anger on my behalf quickly morphed into a focused, investigative fury. "They can't do this, Alex," she said, her eyes blazing. "This isn't just about you. This is about corporate accountability, about the public trust. This is a story that needs to be told." We spent weeks, cloistered in our small apartment, which now felt like a clandestine operations center. While I meticulously organized and decrypted the terabytes of data, cross-referencing logs, highlighting key emails, Sarah began to map out the narrative. She was a phenomenal investigative journalist, with a knack for seeing the patterns in complex data, for connecting the seemingly disparate dots. She identified the key players, the decision points, the chain of negligence that led directly to the system failure. "The beauty of this, Alex," she mused one late night, surrounded by printouts and scribbled notes, "is that they think you're just an IT guy. They don't realize you handed me the blueprints to their entire house of cards. And your annotations, your explanations of what this technical jargon actually means in terms of risk and consequence, that's the dynamite." We made a decision early on. I would remain anonymous, a high-level internal whistleblower. It wasn't about personal revenge for me, not entirely. It was about exposing the systemic rot, the culture of denial and corner-cutting that had led to the disaster. Sarah, with her impeccable credentials and reputation for fearless reporting, would be the public face of the investigation, working in conjunction with a trusted, Pulitzer Prize-winning senior reporter at a national online news organization known for its in-depth investigative pieces. This gave the story immediate credibility and a much wider reach than if I had simply leaked it to a blog. The process of verifying and corroborating the leaked data was painstaking. Sarah and her colleague spent weeks cross-referencing information, seeking off-the-record confirmations from other, terrified, Omnicorp insiders, and consulting with independent cybersecurity experts to validate my technical assessments. The story, when it finally broke, was an earthquake. It wasn't just one article, it was a multi-part investigative series, complete with damning internal documents, anonymized expert testimony, and a clear, irrefutable timeline of negligence. The headline of the first piece, Omnicorp's Meltdown, a cascading failure of management, not just machines. It detailed, with surgical precision, how years of ignored warnings, deferred maintenance, and budget cuts aimed at maximizing short-term profits had created a ticking time bomb within the Prometheus core. My anonymous testimony, detailing my specific warnings and Henderson's dismissals, was central to the narrative. The logs Henderson claimed implicated me were shown to have been selectively edited after I was fired, while my original, time-stamped logs proved my innocence. The public and market reaction was cataclysmic for Omnicorp. Their stock, already battered, went into freefall. Clients, outraged at the deception and the cavalier treatment of their data, began to defect in droves. Class action lawsuits were filed. Government regulators, including the SEC and cybersecurity agencies, announced formal investigations. Omnicorp's carefully crafted image of technological supremacy and corporate responsibility shattered like cheap glass. The internal fallout at Omnicorp was equally dramatic. Mr. Henderson was fired immediately. Other VPs and senior managers implicated in the cover-up or the preceding negligence quickly followed, either fired or, resigning to pursue other opportunities. Marcus Thornton, the CEO, clung to his position for a few more weeks, issuing increasingly desperate denials and promises of reform. But the board, facing an existential crisis, finally forced him out. A new interim CEO was appointed, a renowned corporate turnaround specialist named Ms. Olivia Sterling. She had a reputation for being tough, ethical, and transparent. One of her first acts was to reach out to the anonymous whistleblower through the journalists who had broken the story. That led to a series of discreet, off-the-record meetings between Ms. Sterling, myself, and Sarah, acting as my intermediary and advisor. Ms. Sterling didn't try to make excuses for Omnicorp's past actions. She was blunt. "Mr. Ramsey," she said in our first face-to-face, "Omnicorp wronged you, profoundly. We scapegoated you to cover up systemic failures. On behalf of the company, what remains of it, I offer you our deepest, unreserved apology." She then made her offer. "We need to rebuild, not just our systems, but our integrity, our trust. The journalists, and our own internal review of the data you provided, make it unequivocally clear that you are not only innocent, but were the one person consistently trying to prevent this disaster. I want you to come back to Omnicorp, not just reinstated to your old position, but in a newly created role, Chief Systems Architect and Integrity Officer, reporting directly to me. You will have the authority, the budget, and the mandate to rebuild our core infrastructure correctly, to implement the protocols you advocated for, to ensure something like this never, ever happens again. And of course, full-back pay, a substantial signing bonus, and a public statement completely exonerating you." I didn't say yes immediately. The thought of returning to the scene of my corporate execution, the place that had so casually tried to destroy me, was daunting. But then I thought of the systems I loved, the challenge of rebuilding Prometheus not as a creaky relic but as something new, resilient, a testament to doing things right. I thought of the good people still at Omnicorp, the engineers and technicians who had been just as frustrated as I was by the old regime's incompetence. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a chance to finish what I had started, to implement the vision I'd always had for a truly robust and ethical tech infrastructure. I accepted with a few conditions of my own: full autonomy over my department, an independent oversight committee for critical systems, no more Henderson-style dismissals of valid concerns, and a commitment from the board to invest significantly in training and ethical leadership across the company. Ms. Sterling agreed without hesitation. Returning to Omnicorp was surreal. The 54th floor, once a place of dread, now housed a CEO who actively sought my counsel. My old cubicle was gone. My new office was spacious, with a direct line to Sterling and a team of hand-picked engineers ready to tackle the monumental task ahead. Some former colleagues were wary, others openly admiring. There were whispers, of course, about the IT guy who took down the CEO. I ignored them. I had work to do. Over the next 2 years, we rebuilt. We didn't just patch Prometheus, we re-architected it from the ground up, implementing cutting-edge technologies, robust redundancies, and transparent monitoring systems. We overhauled security protocols, implemented comprehensive disaster recovery plans, and fostered a new culture of open communication and proactive problem-solving within the IT department. It was the hardest, most challenging, and most rewarding work of my life. Omnicorp, under Ms. Sterling's leadership and with its newly fortified digital backbone, slowly began to recover. Trust, once shattered, was painstakingly rebuilt. One successful transaction, one secure data point, one transparent report at a time. My anonymous role in the exposé eventually became an open secret, then a confirmed fact, something Omnicorp, in its new era of transparency, no longer tried to hide. I became an unlikely symbol within the company, the quiet IT guy who had spoken truth to power and, against all odds, had been heard. Sarah and I got married. Our partnership, forged in shared ideals and tested in the crucible of the Omnicorp scandal, was stronger than ever. She continued her brilliant journalistic career, always fighting for the underdog, always digging for the truth. I never lost my love for the quiet hum of servers, for the elegant logic of well-designed systems. But now, that love was coupled with a profound understanding of the human element, the corporate cultures that could either nurture or corrupt the technology they relied upon. I had been scapegoated, yes. But in fighting back, in exposing the rot, I hadn't just cleared my name. I'd helped to build something better, something more resilient, something, I hoped, a little more truthful, from the digital ashes of the old. And that, I realized, was a system upgrade worth fighting for.